Hello, today I am presenting you Unit 3 Supply and Market Equilibrium. Introduction. Supply is related to the behavior of producers. So the supply of product basically depends on cost of production and the management decision. Supply covers such problems like where to sell, when to sell, how much to sell, and what price sell. So basically, supply is related to the producer. It is the producer's part. So the supply of product depends upon the cost of production and the management decision. So meaning of supply. Supply means the amount offered for sale at given price. According to Thomas, the supply of goods in the is the quantity offered for sale in a given market at a given time at various prices. In other words, supply of a product refers to the various amounts which are offered for sale at a particular price during a given time period. So, in order to define supply correctly, we must include the product which which are offered for sale at the particular price. So, product must be included, price must be included, time must be included. Okay, and here quantity is obviously there. So these words must be included to define supply correctly or accurately. Supply is different from stock, so we should not be confused with stock, and it is a little bit different from supply. So supply is different from stock. Stock is the total volume of a commodity which can be brought into the market for sale at a short notice. And supply means the quantity which is actually brought in the market. So stock is future supply. Stock is future supply which is readily kept in a certain place which will be brought into the market in a short notice, and supply is actually that has been brought in the marketplace for readily sold. So supply function. Supply function is a comprehensive one as it analyzes the causes for changes in supply in detailed manner. There are so many variables that affect the supply that will be included in the supply function. Mathematically, a supply function can be represented in the following ways. Supply of good X is the function of P of T Cp N, where Sx is the supply of a given product X, P of price of factory input, T technology, Cp cost of production, and N number of forms. So number of forms determine the supply, cost of production determine the supply, technology determine the supply, price of factory input determine the supply. So all these factors, these are the independent variables, and this is the supply of good X, commodity X. This is dependent to all the independent factors. So determinants of the supply. There are various determinants of the supply like natural factor, change in techniques of production, cost of production, prices of related goods, government policy, number of sellers of firms, complementary goods, discovery of new source of inputs, improvement in transport and communication, future rise in prices, monopoly power. So these are the various determinants that affect the supply. Here, natural factor. So supply depends upon the natural factor. For example, nature gives us so many things, and all the things are not found in everywhere. In certain place, some things are available, like gold mines available in Sri Lanka, petroleum available in Gulf countries, so coal available in India. So in this way, supply depends upon the natural factor. and water resource is abundant in Brazil and Nepal. So that is the supply of water resource, which is easy, which is very cheap in Brazil and Nepal. In this way, natural factor determine the supply, and changes in techniques of production that also determine the supply. Because if the technique is frequently changing, new technique, advanced techniques are brought, introduced in the economy, in the market, then supply becomes abundant, supply becomes smooth. So cost of production is another determinant, because if the cost of production is very expensive, very costly, then supply becomes less or less supply of the goods, because at the higher price, due to rising cost, higher price, consumers cannot afford the goods. That is why less supply will be made in the market. So prices of related goods, government policies, number of sellers of the firms. If there are many firms producing the goods in the market, then supply would be much. If the firms are few, or there is single supplier, single firm, then supply would be less. Complementary goods. If the goods are complementary, if the complementary goods are available, then supply becomes smooth, abundant. If the complementary goods are not available, then supply becomes very less, like petroleum and car. If car is easily available, but if petroleum is not easily available, then supply of car is not smooth. In this way, these are the factors that determine the supply. Here, future rise in prices. If the prices will be right in the future, then supply becomes less, because businessmen, they hope that in future they will sell the goods at the rising price, so they reduce the supply at present. So that is another determinant. Monopoly power. If there is monopoly power, if there is single seller in the market, then supply of the commodity depends upon his monopoly's decision is planning. Okay, that may be less as as compared to the perfectly competitive market. Supply schedule. Supply schedule is a tabular representation of different quantities of commodity supplied at varying prices. It is a tabular representation. It is represented in the form of table. Okay, representation of different quantities included in the table, and prices also included in the table. So what happens? What quantity would be sold or supplied at what price is represented, it exhibited in the form of table. So it is a supply schedule is a representation in the tabular form. It represents the functional relationship between quantity supplied and prices. It is strictly prepared with reference to the price of a given commodity. So supply of quantity is strictly attached to the price of the commodity. Here we can see the table where price and quantity is included, and there is positive relationship between the price and quantity supplied. You can see 5 rupees quantity supplied 500, 4 rupees 400, 3 rupees 300. In this way, if the price goes below 1 rupee 0.75 paisa, we can say no supply at all. If the price is 1 rupee, quantity supplied is 100. So price at the high price, high quantity supplied; at the low price, low quantity supplied. This is the supply schedule. By means of a table, it is represented. And market supply schedule. If the same quantity is supplied by different forms in a market, then when we total all the suppliers quantity supplied offered for sale, that is shown in a tabular form, is called market supply schedule. Here we can see 5 rupees 500, 4 rupees 400. Likewise, in the in the individual supply schedule we saw this. And if there is another supplier, another form B, supplying 600 at the 5 rupees, 500 at 4 rupees, 400 at 3 rupees, 300 at 2 rupees, and 200 at 1 rupees. It is the supply schedule of form B. and this is supply schedule of firm C. And when we total the supply of firm A, firm B, firm C, we get to total market supply. Okay, at rupees 500, at rupees 5, at rupees 5, the quantity supplied is 1800 unit, and at rupees 1, quantity supplied is 600 unit. The trend of increasing and decreasing is same whether it is the case of individual supply, individual firm, individual supplier, or it is the case of market supply or total supply. Means high price, high supply, low price, low supply. The same thing is shown in the market supply, total supply, high price, much quantity, highest quantity supplied, and low price, lowest quantity is supplied. So same thing is exhibited by using this curve here. You can see this is price. Suppose price 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees, 40 rupees. Your quantity supply is here 10, 20, 30, 40. You can see if this upward going supply curve here, if price is 15 rupees, quantity supply is 10 rupees. If price is increased to 30 rupees, quantity supplied is increased to 30 rupees. So it shows that when the price is increased, quantity supply is also increased. When we join these 2 points, points A and point B, we get to supply curve. So by using the supply schedule, we derive the supply curve, which is moving upward from left to right. This is opposite to demand curve moving downward from left to right. It is the demand curve. This is supply curve moving upward from left to right. The law of supply. Given the cost of production, profit is likely to be high at higher prices. Higher the prices, the greater is the inducement to the producer to produce and sell more goods to generate much profit. As you know, every firm has the objective to maximize the profit. So at the high price, there is a high chance of getting more profit. That's why that is a kind of inducement, incitation to the producer. At the higher prices, they are induced to produce much good and sell those goods in the market at the highest price, and then there is chance of getting much profit at the rising price. Hence, more quantity is produced and supplied at the high prices, and the less is produced and supplied at the low prices. This relationship between the price and the quantity supplied is popularly known as the law of supply. So relationship between quantity and price is established in the law of supply. This is called law of supply, where price and quantity supplied is popularly known as the law of supply. The law of supply states that, this is the definition, other things remaining constant, the quantity supply varies directly with the price. That is, when the price falls, supply will contract, and when price rises, supply will extend. So, when price rises, supply will extend. And when price contracts, price falls, supply will also contract or fall. So there is a direct relationship or positive relationship between supply and the price offered for sale. Other things which should remain constant for the law to operate. It is mentioned here other things remaining this constant. So what are these other things? That is given here. Other things are number of forms, scale of production, and the speed of production that remains constant. That should not vary frequently. Okay, this should remain constant. Number of form, scale of production, and speed of production. Number two, availability of other input must be constant. Techniques of production must be constant. Cost of production must be constant. Market price of other related goods must be constant. And climate and weather conditions, all these things must be constant. And if all these things must are constant, if these things are not changed as per the time, then the relationship between price and quantity offered for sale is established by the law of supply, which is positively related. Now, exception to the law of supply. What are the exception? Exception means the case where the law of supply does not work. Law of supply fails. Exception to any law indicates the violation of the law. The condition that does not allow to be operative is the exception, the given law. So the conditions do not operate, do not allow, or that is the violation of the law, that is called exception. Under certain exceptional circumstances, in spite of rise in price, supply may not expand or at a lower rate, more quantity may be sold. So this is the opposite. Exceptional case. Under certain exceptional circumstances, in spite of rise in price, actually according to law of supply, when price is rising, quantity offered for sale, quantity supplied must be high. But here what happens? In spite of rise in price, supply may not expand, supply may not grow, or at a lower rate, more quantity to be sold. And when the supply is low, more quantity will be sold. And uh, when the price is low, more quantity would be supplied. And when the price is high, less quantity would be supplied. This is opposite to the law of supply. In this case, supply curve slopes backward. So if such case is found in some commodity, some good, law of supply does not work. In such cases, the supply curve slopes backward. Here we can see supply curve moving back. Suppose here wage rate and hours worked, our L1 labor force working here at this wage rate, and when wage rate increased to W2, labor supply increased to L2 hours of worked, and when wage rate increased to W3, instead of increasing labor supply, it decreased to L3 from L2 because because at the growing wage rate, their living standard becomes high. When the living standard becomes high, then the labor they are reluctant to go for the job. They want some less rest. They want some leisure. That is why it is the backward bending supply curve in the case of labor supply. Okay, this is the exceptional case. Exceptions of law of supply. So other exceptional cases are given here. Closure of business. If there is time to close the business by some reason, then law of supply does not work. They offer they offer much commodity for sale at the lower price. So because they are going to close the business and change the business. Agriculture product. Agriculture product law of supply does not work because some perishable goods like milk and vegetables, such product, fish, such product may ruin, may destroy, may perish if not consumed within a short period of time. That's why in such cases, law of supply does not work. And monopoly, law of supply does not work because monopoly just determine the price and quantity according to its own plan. So competition. If there is severe competition, law of supply does not work. At high price, high supply. That thing cannot be found in the severe competition in the market. And perishable good, agriculture product, I told you here. And rare goods. In case of rare goods also, law of supply does not find working. Rare goods. Because it is not found. Even if the price is high, goods cannot be supplied at the same rate. And out of fashion, goods out of fashion. Also, it is not found law of supply operative. Shift in law of supply. When supply of product changes only due to a change in the price of that product alone, it is called as either expansion or contraction in supply. If it is due to the changes in price, supply increases, that is called expansion, supply decreases, that is called contraction. Increase in supply implies more supply at the same price. Price is constant. At the same price, more quantity would be supplied, or same quantity of supply at the lower price, or same quantity would be supplied at the lower price. At the lower price, low quantity would be supplied. But here, what happens? Price remains constant. Other factors are operative. So what happens? Here, exceptional cases function. Other determinants function. So uh, supply curve may shift in non-price case. Increase in supply implies more supply at the same price or same quantity of supply at the lower price. Decreasing supply implies that less quantity is supplied at the same price or same quantity is supplied at the higher price. So this is the shifting case. We can see this here in the figure. You can see this is original supply curve, yes, which is moving upward smoothly, and it is shifting forward to S1. It is because the favorable natural condition for production, a fall in input prices, improved technology, lower product taxes, less costly regulation. Due to all these factors, not price, other factors which are providing favorable condition to supply more goods in the market. Due to this, the supply curve shift forward. Here you can see this is the supply curve, original supply curve. Now here you can see supply curve shift backward due to poor natural condition for production. So natural condition is not supportive, it is poor, and rise in input prices, input price rises, a decline in technology, and higher product taxes, more costly regulation. So all these factors they cause the supply curve to shift backward. So all whether it shifts forward or whether it shifts backward, all these factors are working under the non-price factors. Okay, so this is the shifting case of the supply curve. Here you can see factors that increase supply, factors that decrease supply. Elasticity of supply. The elasticity of supply establishes a quantitative relationship between the supply of commodity and its price. Hence, we can express the numerical change in supply with the change in the price of a commodity using the concept of elasticity. So here elasticity, supply elasticity means just responsiveness of change in quantity supplied due to the change in price. Same case we discussed in the elasticity of demand. However, the major factor controlling the supply of a commodity is its price. Therefore, we generally talk about the price elasticity of supply. So there are other factors that affect the supply, but generally we talk about the price elasticity of supply. The price elasticity of supply is the ratio of the percentage change in the price to the percentage change in quantity supplied of a commodity. That is the definition of price elasticity of supply. That is the ratio or percentage or degree or responsiveness, whatever name we give, ratio of the percentage change in the price to the percentage change in quantity supplied of a commodity. Here, symbolically we can write supply elasticity uh, of supply, that is equal to here quantity change del Q by Q into 100 percentage change in quantity supply by percentage change in price, which is equal to del Q by Q divided by del P by P. Here is the notation. You can read from here. The types of elasticity of supply. There are some types of elasticities of supply like perfectly inelastic supply. A service or commonly commodity has a perfectly inelastic supply if a given quantity of it can be supplied whatever might be the price. It does not respond to the changing price. You know, supply goes on increasing irrespective to the change in price. The elasticity of supply for such a service or commodity is zero. A perfectly inelastic supply curve is a straight line parallel to x-axis. The supply of exclusive items like painting of Mona Lisa falls into this category. So such items, supply of such items come into the perfectly inelastic supply. whatever might be the price on offer, there is no way we can increase its supply. Relatively less elastic supply. When the change in supply is relatively less when compared to the change in price, we say that the commodity has less elastic supply, relatively less elastic supply. In such case, the price elasticity of such supply assumes a value less than 1. Relatively greater elasticity of supply. When change in supply is relatively more when compared to the change in price, we say the commodity has a relatively greater elastic supply. In such case, the price elasticity of supply assumes a value greater than 1. Unitary elastic, same percentage. Change in price responds to the same amount of change in quantity supplied, that is unitary elastic and perfectly elastic. In such case, the supply becomes zero with even a slight fall in the price and becomes infinite with a slight rise in price. A perfectly elastic supply curve is a straight line parallel to the x-axis. So these 5 types of supply elasticity is represented by using this uh, map. You can see here perfectly elastic, price is constant, price is fixed, but it is parallel to the x-axis, uniformly going parallel to x-axis. Its elasticity is perfectly elastic, means it is infinitive. Here, perfectly inelastic, whatever the price may be, but quantity remains constant. This is Q, remaining constant, but prices of the commodity is going on increasing. If such thing is found in any commodity, in any case, this is perfectly inelastic supply. Unit elastic, if it responds to the supply at the same degree, at the same proportion, that is unit elastic. For example, if price increases by 20%, supply also increases by the same percent, that is called unit elastic. And here elasticity greater than unity means if price increases by 20%, supply increases by 30%, that is greater than unity. And less than unity, if price increases by 20%, supply increase to 15%, we say that is a less than unity. These are the cases of elasticity of supply. And there are various determinants of elasticity of supply: time periods, mobility of factors of production, cost of production, number of sellers, goals of the firms, price of related goods, nature of markets, technological improvement, political conditions. These are the various determinants that affect elasticity of supply. Time period is very important determinant of elasticity of supply. If it is long time, elasticity of supply may be very less. If the time is very short, elasticity of supply may be high or greater than 1. So it depends upon the elasticity of supply. It depends upon the time to determine elasticity of supply. Very important determinant. And mobility of factor of production. If factors of production are mobile, that can be transferred from one sector to another sector, one place to another place, then its elasticity of supply will be uh, less. If it is not mobile, then it will be high. In this way, all determinants are here to show different sort of elasticity of supply. Market equilibrium. The intersection of supply and the demand curve determines the market equilibrium. When supply and demand curve meet at a point, this is called market equilibrium. At the equilibrium price, the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. When quantity demanded meet quantity supplied, exactly that is the equilibrium point. Together, demand and supply determine the price and the quantity that will be brought and sold in a market. Market equilibrium is a state of even balance in which opposite forces neutralize each other. So that is the balancing forces, balancing position of forces that determine the demand and forces that determine the supply. If all the forces meet at a point, neutralizing point, that is called equilibrium. It is a position of rest characterized by absence of change, no changes, no push, no pull, no tug of war. That condition is the equilibrium condition. It is a state where there is complete agreement of the economic plans of various market agents so that no one has the tendency to alter his decision. No changes at all. Standstill position. That kind of position is called equilibrium position. So this equilibrium position is shown here in this table. You can see price of commodity rupees 30, 25, 20, 10, 5. Quantity demand is as per price reduced, quantity demand is increases from 5 to 25, and quantity supplied has the positive relationship with the price. So quantity supplied is 30 rupees, 25, 25 rupees, 20. So when the price is high, supplied is quantity supplied is also high. When the price is low, quantity supply is also gradually declining. So state of market, here we can say, here demand is 5, supply is 25. So supply is greater than demand. And when the supply is greater than demand, then it becomes price decreases. Here supply is greater than demand, price decreases. Here demand is equal to supply. This is the equilibrium, neutral. Here demand is greater than supply because demand is 20 at 10 rupees and supply is 10 at the 10 at the same price. So here demand is greater than supply, so price increases, and here demand is greater than supply, there's a tendency of price to increase. So this is the table that shows the equilibrium position will be where when the demand is equal to supply. So here in the example you can see at 20 rupees quantity demanded is 15 and quantity supplied is 15. This is the equilibrium position in the market. So here equilibrium position can be shown here by using this figure. You can see demand curve which comes downward, slopes downward because it reacts negatively or inversely to the change in price. So here supply curve moves upward because it reacts positively with the change in price. So here interaction between the demand and supply curve. This E equilibrium point at 600 million gallons. Okay, and price is $1.40 petroleum. Okay, if price is increased, suppose if price is increased from $1.40 to $1.80, then what happens when the price increases? Then definitely supply also increases. Look here, supply is very high. You can see supply more than 600. You can see. Okay, but demand, when the price increases, demand decrease from 600 to 500. So in this case, what happens? Excess supply because supply is greater than demand because as the price increase, supply is greater than demand that we show here. As the price increases, supply is greater than demand. So now price decreases. The tendency is to decrease the price. Now tendency. When these things happens, then price, there is a pressure for the producer or supplier to decrease the price. So price decreases again. It comes down. Here again, here is excess supply because at this point price is above the equilibrium point. That is why here is excess supply. So again there is a pressure for producer or supplier to decrease the price. Again finally it comes to point E where demand and supply becomes same as the price $1.40 and same quantity 600 million gallon is demanded and supplied. And when we go below this price $1.40, suppose we go to $1.20, what happens? At the reduced price, what happens? Supply is reduced. Here supply is below 600, but demand is increased at the reduced price. So demand is 700, but demand cannot be materialized because there is less supply in the market. So what happens? It gives positive pressure. Price moves upward. You can see here if demand, if supply is less, then price increases. There is tendency of price to increase. So this is, if supply is less supply, then definitely price increases and gradually it reaches to E. Finally, it reaches to E. So here excess demand case, here is excess supply case, but these are temporary cases. But finally, there will be equilibrium position where demand and supply curve meet at a point. This is the equilibrium position. Here this is in a excess supply case, this is an above equilibrium price, here below equilibrium price, and this E is the equilibrium price. Change in market equilibrium. And when does the equilibrium change? The changes in equilibrium price will occur when there will be shift either in demand curve or in supply curve or both. If demand curve shifts, there will be change, or if supply curve shift, there will be change, or both may shift simultaneously, there would be change in equilibrium, which is shown here. You can see here in the initial stage, demand and supply curve meet at a point, equilibrium quantity is Q0 and equilibrium price is P0, and if demand goes backward due to some reason, like suppose income of people reduced or decreased, then demand shift backward. So what happens then? It meets supply curve at this point E1. As a result, price reduces and quantity also decreased. This is the shifting case of the demand curve. Here we can see shifting case of the supply curve also. In the similarly, we can see shifting case of the supply curve here. You see supply originally initially here is the price, here is the quantity, and now supply is shifted backward. Then what happens? If the supply is less, then price is increased and quantity is reduced. And both, okay, here demand shifting forward due to some uh, factors, determining factors other than price. What happens then? Demand curve shift forward, then originally demand and supply curve meet here at this price 0, quantity Q0, but when demand curve shift backward, then it meets here at E2, then price is reduced and quantity is also reduced, which is shown here. Same case is here. And here is simultaneous change. Here you can see demand 0, D0, S0, price P0, quantity Q0, and supply shifted. For example, supply shifted S1. Then what happened? Supply came back. Then what happened? P1, price increased from P0 to P1 and quantity decreased from Q0 to Q1. Okay, so this is the case. And here we can see from here, if demand falls, demand shift back, then what happens? New equilibrium is determined at this point. Price P0 and quantity, price P2 and quantity Q2. Okay, and this meets supplied, this shifted demand curve meets at E2, quantity demanded is Q2, and this meets at shifted supply curve at E3, then quantity demanded again decreases to Q3, and price goes little bit upward. It may go more than P0. So this is the simultaneous change in demand and supply, which is changing at a time. So with this, today's class is over, and I request you all, please watch this video carefully, and if you like, please subscribe and share. Thank you very much. Have a good day.